As we celebrate Women's Month in South Africa, we acknowledge and thank those women committed to conservation, working tirelessly both on the front lines and behind the scenes. The Endangered Wildlife Trust is proud of the women who dedicate their lives to fighting to save species, conserve habitats, and benefit people. Here's to strong women everywhere who are dedicated to protecting forever together.
And I turned to Shaw and I saw that she had this panicked look on her face. Either she was afraid that something had happened or she was afraid that she was going to miss out on something. But instead of her missing out on those lions, we drove up next to them and I switched off the car so that she could hear what was going on. Now, these lions had killed a kudu, and she could hear these two cubs, both 8 months old at the time, busy pushing and shoving each other out the way to get to the best parts of the meat. And the mom was lying just to the side in the shade. Now, I'd known that before losing her sight, Sean probably knew what a lion looked like. But I really wanted her to know what this lion looked like. So for the first time in my guiding career, I started to describe to someone what a lion looked like. And I found that, I started to notice things in that lion that I'd never seen before.
Something very, very interesting. I didn't plan this, but this is a scene rarely seen. This is what we call a journey of giraffe. So beautiful.
Tune into WildEarth every single day. It's in your nature.
Delivering 6 hours of HD wildlife content live every day is no small feat. It's a massive team effort and we all rely on one another. Cam ops have a bit of work to do in the morning, up nice and early, get all the checks out of the way and make sure we're ready to go live. Helping others fall in love with nature brings meaning to what I do. It's also a lot of fun.
with the world, live on WildEarth's daily safaris. If you're interested, then head over to our website to find out more.
We're just gonna sit here and enjoy this moment in silence and just hopefully get some sounds as they start moving through the grass. Sit back and just enjoy. Hi, Lucy. Lucy wants to know, how do they protect themselves when there's a storm? Now, there is not much they can do other than huddle together. Tree cover is not sufficient to hide every single one of them. So they very much just do what they did now. They'll huddle together if it's cold and just wait the storm out. There's not much they can do other than that. They've got a good amount of body fat, so that does help. The skin is very thick as well. So they are adapted to various conditions that we'll find down here in Africa. And fortunately, our storms are usually in summer, so being cold is not necessarily the issue. I'm sure they also get extremely uncomfortable just like us. I just believe that they are much better equipped to deal with it naturally. They don't have to wear jackets and so forth. And weather is also just one of the limiting factors within a species. It's something that I bring up quite a lot. And weather does play a role in maintaining and limiting numbers so they don't exceed the ecological carrying capacity of an area. That one's giving us a bit of a smile there. It's not really smiling, it's a behavior to refer to as Fleming's grimace, and he's just testing the receptiveness of a cow there. There's an organ in the upper palate called Jacobson's organ, which could interpret various chemicals in the urine and other body fluids of the animal. So that bull could tell immediately whether that cow is either on heat, whether she's pregnant, she might have a calf that's suckling. So it's like a chemical communication that they do. And that grimace that you see is in order to engage that organ. Well, we will be staying with them. I think it will be a very good idea to remain with them follow them for a substantial amount of time, as I firmly believe there might be lions not too far from here. There's few things as impressive as a group of several hundred African buffalo. And we're just gonna sit here and enjoy them in peace and quietness and watch them getting ready for their day. That was just delightful. Just watching them move through the African grass. Just absolutely magnificent. Last couple of them just got up. There's one or two still lying down, but the bulk of the herd has started to move off in a southeastern direction, and we're gonna stay with them. I might just have to reposition momentarily. There's a few old bulls that are still lying down, the old warriors. Probably a couple of joints that are aching already. And why I'm positioned in the rear of the herd still and not getting in front of them is to just observe and view if there are any sign of cats around, lions in particular. This is where they will focus their attentions, is the rear of the herd, where all the very old ones and the sick ones and the injured ones will be trailing the main herd. So far, no sign of any cats. What I'm going to do, they are all behind us now, so we're going to just quickly reposition. Bush behind me. Nice thing, it's a fairly open area, so quite a nice bit of room to maneuver, windy up and about and through the woods. go and walk here by these very old bulls, very impressive horns. They're not keen to get up. They decided, nah, we'll wait. We will wait for this. We are going to wait. Not yet time to go. There we go. Probably realize they're going to get left behind. Alison, yes indeed. When you are a professional guide, eventually you will run into unforeseen circumstances, and I've had a few encounters that nearly went south, and fortunately I managed to get out of most of them. Now these encounters was usually on foot, and I must say that early on in my career, when I just started doing trails on foot, and without the experience that I have today, I sort of had the tendency to get into trouble more often. If I say trouble, it's just, you know, the more experienced you become, you start to almost identify areas where trouble could lurk. Now, remember that even though buffalo are arguably the most dangerous of the big five, in my opinion, a herd like this, if you've got open terrain, you can get close enough on foot to take a photo without being unsafe, and it's just having the wind in your favor. And the problem is that these old boys that we were viewing just now, if you walk in very thick areas, you need to do it very slowly, very systematically, listen to every single thing, because you do not want to encounter them at close range. That's where your problem's going to be. If it's at a distance and they do approach you, you will have room to maneuver yourself out. And when we're out on foot, the whole idea is to create a bush experience, to experience everything on foot. And yes, there is sometimes the opportunity to safely approach a dangerous animal, but the terrain has to be, the terrain, the weather, wind, sun, everything needs to be 100% in the favor of the guide before he'll make such a decision. So whenever you are in Africa, just remember that today's guides go through rigorous training. The assessment systems is very thorough, and you'll be 100% safe. We'll just go a little bit forward now because they are starting to move quite fast. And it might not be a bad idea to try and get back to the road, because I think we might even intercept them there. The road is just about 50, 60 meters up ahead. Yeah, being a field guide, it's in that aspect very similar to any career choice. Early on, in spite of good training and studies, you know, you still need to learn the job. You still need to learn lessons, and you sometimes learn them very hard, but that is the process of growth in any career. And being a professional guide is exactly the same. Right, we'll just try and get in position again, and we'll then get back to you.
Calling all WildEarth explorers, we have a new and frankly awesome travel prize for you to win. andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve encompasses an impressive 28,000 hectares of protected wildlife land in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. As you have seen on WildEarth, andBeyond Phinda showcases one of the continent's finest game viewing experiences and is well known for close-up sightings of the elegant yet elusive cheetah, as well as the rare black rhino. Sign up to be a WildEarth explorer before the 16th of September, and you and a friend could be heading to the magnificent Phinda Mountain Lodge, where you will spend 3 nights escaping the real world at this ultimate safari location. WildEarth Explorers, it's in your nature.
We're here at the Advanced Rifle Handling Challenge, which is actually lots of challenges in one to gauge the contestants' skills at different distances and different speeds. This is probably the challenge that the contestants are the most nervous about. So let's get them locked and loaded. Are now doing the Hales halt, where they have to run back and forth to a target, turn, take aim, and shoot. And this simulates a chase in a real environment and gets the heart pumping and the blood pressure up. James gave us a demonstration, and the skill involved in this exercise is remarkable.
This is a battle of 2 great carnivores of the African wilderness. Whew. Whoa! You don't want to be under those jaws. Definitely, this round goes to the lion. Look at that. Fantastic.
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth daily.
So we are up in mobile again, so we're checking end of the roads here in case there may be cats, maybe lions or leopard that may be moving about back to Djuma for sure, especially lion because there was none yesterday, so if there is any around here we will then able to know. So the wind was actually blowing a lot last night to the north, which if it happens, the lions have picked up the scent of the buffaloes, then they're definitely going to come back in. But doesn't look like they've come in. Unless if maybe they're sitting on a kill, because when it's wind, the successful rate is actually higher on cats in terms of a hunt and kill. So a leopard lover, you asking have I seen a leopard track today? No. So I haven't seen a leopard today tracks. So it's because, you know, we haven't maybe spent a lot of time on a lot of roads. First things, we actually went to spend time with these buffalo tracks, and of course Chris then got them on the other side. But since we're actually back on the trail again for research, perhaps would discover any of these tracks if they ever a leopard came into an area. Sure. I know it was actually yesterday morning visual of a shasha and a kalamba back there, And the guys have searched around yesterday afternoon, and they didn't discover anything there. But they, there was nothing happened there, so there was no kill where we believe they wouldn't spend a lot of time in the same area. And there was also a lot of argument between the two cats. So I believe eventually one of them, or each one of them, had to be somewhere. But yeah, we'll find out during the search here.
Yeah, we're just, as we mentioned earlier, just trailing this herd, and there is reports of lion tracks around this area. I just bypassed one of the Djuma guides, and they are following tracks of lions that seems to be heading directly towards us. Now, that does not necessarily mean we will see them immediately. They can sometimes trail these herds for hours or days even before making a move. But the action will happen at the rear of the herd. It's always a good call. If you know there's lion activity around, it's always a good plan for somebody to just remain behind the herd and follow them. At the same time, just enjoy the buffalo herd. Hi, Craig. That is a brilliant question. All right. Buffalo is not considered antelope. Now, it's a very vague group name, antelope. There's no official taxonomic grouping that would place antelope in a specific order or family or tribe. Now, I need to just give you a slight background as to what basically is meant by orders and families. Now, an order is a wide group of related creatures and their subdivisions. For instance, primates is an order of mammals. Rabbits would be an order. Rodents would be an order. Now, so buffalo belong to the order bovids. The bovids or bovidae is the order that's made up of hoofed animals that's got split hooves, and they basically, well, the order is actually the ruminants, but then further division would be family. So the ruminants or ruminantia, they are hoofed animals that ruminate. They've got a four-chambered stomach. That's the order division. Family would be the bovids. Now, the bovids include ox-like creatures, buffalo, cattle, bison. It also have another family that includes the sheep and goats, and then a lot of different other families that are mainly some of the antelope. So, for instance, the spiral horn antelope group. Now, the further division from family, the bovids, includes antelope and buffalo, will then be tribes. So buffalo are in the tribe Bovinis, which is the cattle and ox-like things. Kudu, another tribe, or spiral horn antelopes, that's kudu, Ngala, bushbuck, the spiral horns. The wildebeest group, which is Topi, wildebeest, the blesbok and bontebok we find in South Africa and so forth. So there's no official grouping that refers to antelope. Antelope is just a generalized term that's used very loosely for animals that have fixed horns and split hoofs, and it's mainly used in Africa, although also other parts of the world but not in modern times so much. So, for instance, wildebeest we don't really consider antelope, but in a way they are. It's a very, very loose term. Okay, we're going to continue around the block, not to lose track of these buffaloes. It's probably best to stay on the road for now instead of following them to where they're going. You can still see a few of the tail enders around, and I'm just looking. What's happening here? So I get back to Craig's question about antelope. Now, we've established that it's a very loose grouping. Interesting is one of the main differences between antelope and deer, or deer-like creatures. Now, deer is another family within the order of ruminants, and that family of the Cervidae, that includes deer, elk, moose, all those animals with antlers. Now, antelope or bovids, they have fixed horn structures, which is bone covered by a keratin cap, and it's a permanent structure. They never shed it, so if it breaks, it's gone. It doesn't necessarily grow back again. So it's a much more permanent structure. Whereas, let's get out of this one. Deer, for instance, they will shed their antlers every year, and the antlers are mainly bone. It's just initially covered with a bit of velvet or skin-like substance, which they loosen very quickly. And then every year they shed the antlers and a new set grows back. We don't have any deer in sub-Saharan Africa though, or at least not natural. There's been some deer that was introduced. And that brings me to another trivia. I just mentioned that there's no deer in sub-Saharan Africa, but the question is, are there any native deer to Africa, or any deer that either used to occur or still occurs naturally in any part of Africa? You need to send your answer to hashtag WildEarth on Twitter or at FC YouTube, or leave a comment on the live safari on the WildEarth webpage. Kids, you can also participate. If you're younger than 18, you can also send us your answer, or even a question if you want, to kids questions at wildearth.tv. Question is, are there any deer that naturally occur in Africa? And I'll await your answer.
So everybody, we are still trying to look around for all animals around here. It's pretty cool. It's pretty wind as well. To find all these animals, or antelope species, which they would be around, but none of them are seen around here. Perhaps they also in this drainage line system, even though it's not safe, but for a dam to keep themselves warm, they would definitely do that. In the end, going to do the same. So what we do when we don't get them, so we perhaps going to drive close to this drainage line system, may get all of it's nyalas, bushbucks. Wherever those impala might be, they just all just have to get around. It's a way of providing cold, warm. Boundary in the north there, so there's no tracks of them coming.
Well, while we await the answer on our question earlier, we are still with the buffalo, and I'm going to remain with them for some time. These old boys just drilling, and one's got almost no hair left. Hi, Paul, with an answer, says fallow deer. All right, we do find fallow deer in South Africa, although they were introduced, so they're not native to Africa at all. Although there is some populations that's become feral and in good numbers in certain parts, but they are not native to Africa. They were introduced. Very good answer, although it's not the one that we're looking for. And a hint is that, remember my previous comment was that there's no Mr. Wild says it's the Barbary Red Deer, and that is 100% correct. Remember I mentioned there is no native deer to sub-Saharan Africa. There's a few correct answers coming in, but yes, that is the correct answer. Now the Barbary Red Deer, or Barbary Stag as it's also known, is a subspecies of the red deer that you'll find in Europe. And they are native to Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, the northern African coast. Almost hunted to extinction, but there's still a few populations around. The most well-known population is in the Tswalu National Park in the Atlas Mountains. And yes, the Barbary Red Deer, or Red Stag, is the correct answer. Megan Edwards says it's Atlas deer, and yes, it is also called Atlas deer. It's known by several different names. Atlas deer, Barbary Red Deer, Barbary Stag. There's even some authors that refer to as an African elk. And it's not really an elk, it's a deer. But yes, Megan, that is 100% correct. They're also known as Atlas deer. And it is a subspecies of the red deer that's found further north in Europe and parts of Asia. They are, however, slightly smaller than their European counterparts. I've never seen one. Oh, well, I'm actually not telling the truth. I've seen one in a zoo, but that doesn't count for me. Another animal that I hope to see one day, if I'm ever in that position. My list is just growing. I'm gonna run out of time. There's just too many animals worldwide that intrigues me, and there's a nice bull there. Let's see if we can get a gap. There we go. Oh, look at that. As we continue trailing this buffalo, we're gonna just head over to Andrew and see what he's up to.
So everybody, we got looks like a juvenile bachelor eagle flying right around. It's been hovering around, but it's very difficult for most eagles to actually hunt when it's very wind like this. So all they do, they might sometimes try to actually approach the wind, which in the end they will be overpowered by the wind. Is pushing to go to the south, but the wind is pushing more a lot to the north. And then also type of eagles like that, Bachelor, since they have very short tail, they're not easy for them to balance. So it's actually very difficult for these birds to hunt in heavy wind like this, but they're gonna have to try their best because it's at daylight anyway. Let's see what actually it's spotted around here. So if there is something that happens, we'll probably check it out, because we're checking this is actually western boundary, where if there's something on the left-hand side it will be in Djuma, and then the western side would be the R2, so that side. So it looks like there's another one, so 2 of the Bachelor around here that are flying about. Not actually easy bird to stick with, especially since they cannot actually balance, but it's still there.
WISA has a long history, over 90 years, of being involved and even pioneering aspects of the conservation sector in South Africa. Over that long history, we have realized that all of the issues that we are facing both locally and globally are due to human impact. Therefore, we need to concentrate on working with people, and that is what WISA does. What makes me passionate about the work that we do at WISA, and in particular the work that I engage in, is actually connecting with people. Currently the work that I'm working on is working with youth in a skills development program, and just to meet the youth and to hear their stories and to bring them opportunities that we hope will have some impact on their lives really, really fuels me to get up every morning. A huge shout out to the women that I work with, as well as to all the women that are contributing hugely within the environmental sector, both in South Africa and in the world.
We got there, he had probably moved a couple of 100 meters down the river and was about 10 meters from this causeway. So I radioed the lodge quickly and just asked them to bring a Land Cruiser around and some tow straps. So we thought we were going to try be heroes and save this giraffe. And now a big bull, probably over a ton. He's a big unit. Got the tow strap one side of the giraffe and managed to get it around him with the boat, and the other edge of the tow strap obviously back onto the bank. So we made this U around him because he was lying quite close to the bank. And we put that Land Cruiser in low range and we just gave it hell and pulled that giraffe, and the tow strap slipped up and we thought, oh no, it's going to slip off the top of the head, and it caught on his Aussie cones at the top. And that last 10 meters pulled him out onto the bank, and he battled. He was obviously quite weak and all that.
Looks like it's a very difficult climb because every time it tries to climb, the ground is breaking, so it slides down. But it's the only one. Look at that. That is the call of desperation with the cub. It's like, what are you doing, mommy? Oops. Oof.
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth daily.
It's just moving slowly and grabbing a bite of grass every now and then. Well, we just almost feel sleepy in a way watching them eat. We're gonna go back to Andrew's, found some more soaring raptors.
So we still got a visual of these battle eagle. Always just very nice to see this bird on its hunt. Would it be actually very difficult also for us to tell whether that bird is going to go away, since it's pushed by the wind quite a lot? So we're also driving south, this is where we approach the wind all the time. But you can also tell this bird looks like it's also going to the south, but due to the power of the wind, it won't be possible for it. And they're actually a very flighty bird. They have anything from 170 to 185 centimeters of their wingspan, so they were able to make it. But a lot of time they follow wherever it's a dead animal, compete with the vultures. They can also hunt around, so it looks like we lost it. Go on just on the other side. So let's check it out. Perhaps we will finally discover what this bird has spotted around here. So you are asking would be any animals that are benefiting from the wind. So the carnivorous species, those hunt as prey species, which is most cats that would benefit through the wind and the heavy of the rain. And this is where they always succeed on their hunting process. Where many of the prey species, they a lot of time confused, not understanding exactly of what is going on around. Just a long visual of a group of impala, but they're not actually close by. They're actually far away. We actually been talking about impala not knowing what they're up to. But they're far in the bush there. You can see how fluffy they are even they're so far away from us. But this is because of the colder front that has pushed in. And of course there's still a lot of wind, colder wind. All they do, they would just stay careful and watch out, because any possible surprise for them will happen. This is where a leopard most of the time may spend time, aiming for any of the target on his impala, because of a lot of the noise that wind make disturb the hearing on the impalas. Also sense a smell. Won't always be accurate. So these now cat species, when they hunt, they always approach the wind, so that makes sure the prey species mustn't smell them. There's quite a few of a male that we can see in there. Tammy, you're asking, have I seen an impala mating? Yes, I've seen an impala mating, because actually they are seasonal. So when that season begin, and then you definitely see a lot of time males mate with these females. It's got to be one male all the time that dominate all females around. So you won't see any mate when the mating season is all done. We begin of May, April there, and that's why a lot of time you hear a lot of impalas make such a sound. Those are dominant, and they advertise their presence of themselves being in the area, also dominating the area. Of course, when you hear such a voice, you wouldn't believe, because it's actually go far enough, it's very growl kind of, but continuously. When it does that by raising their neck and head up, so the voice may travel far enough for those that are around. You have to notice that he's in the area as a dominant male. Sometimes very difficult for impala to survive because they actually medium antelopes. They're mainly taken down by leopards, lions even, cheetahs, wild dogs. These are the main threat. So then also some of the pythons, rock python around here. Other than that, and nature causes, which is mainly diseases, would also affect them, but they're not actually highly on it infection. So compared to the buffaloes, or they carry a lot of tuberculosis, foot and mouth diseases. It's quite a lot of impalas in there. So what do? We're just gonna take another moment here. They're on their own environment where it's quite a lot of bushes. We may lose them. We can actually travel the roads here in case they maybe had leopards around here that they don't know that leopards around. So this is why it's so important sometimes when you spend time with such antelopes. You would eventually discover something around them, which mainly would be the cat species. So not much of a visual of them, so we're gonna carry on, check roads, tracks, but also keeping an eye. It's quite a bit of a visual, we can see through still. It's not actually densely bushy though. Asking why are there specific mating season for the impalas. So I know a lot of time most of the animals are all year round breeder, which is then when you look at the success rate in a population of these animals, sometimes it's not great. So because impala they stay in a group. That's why. So the mating season only begins in a certain month in some area, not everywhere here. So April, May there, that's the beginning of the mating, but then some area then could be some different month. But yeah, just because they in the group and they live in a group, most of the antelope that they also remain in a group, they may be the same. But they're not alone, so also the wildebeest, they also are seasonal as well. So those are actually live in group, but there are most antelope. So we are checking around here. We're gonna go down, lower down, so just to avoid a lot of wind. Maybe perhaps this is where most of the animals are. Animal, when they feel there's so much wind, because they're actually right to the top of their hill or land, and they may lower themselves down into the hill, so the wind may penetrate less into that area. The small antelopes such as a duiker and these steenbok, because they are solitaries and they would probably hide in these grasses. Those that cannot hide because they're quite big, and then they have to stay in the river area like that. So we're still mobile searching. I may actually find my way down to these, low ground. This is, I think, where it's going to be a lot easy for us to hide away from this wind. So, but it is actually a season for a wind. So before a drizzling take place, all of the leaves that we see all dried and they still remain up in these trees. It's a chance they're gonna have to drop down to the ground. And then finally the rain come. Not a heavy rain, but that are kind of like spitting over the rain, but they also getting everything back to the ecosystem again by rotting all of its dry material, animals' poop, leaves. So the ground itself get regenerated back to the normal, fertilize it, and then now when the humid take places during that summer, it's going to be beautiful again. So ecosystem, it can fix itself. So Jonathan, you are asking why we've seen a lot of buffaloes in winter rather than in the summer. So I know we experienced a lot of also the elephants came into the area for a few weeks already. And so it's all about the same with the buffaloes. We know those are moving herds, but for their own benefit, it's a water source, but food source. So water is available, food is available. So a lot of time we don't have these buffalo, the grass is balanced. And they're the one that actually they call bulk grazer, which they take actually the top of the grass. So when they get into the area where there hasn't been many of the buffalo, so they love it much because they still get what they need, which is the bulking, which is all the seeds, grasses, the top end of them, which is mostly in this area because they haven't been spent much time. So we would see a lot of them coming in for that reason. But also the water is one of those that are attracting so much of them coming in back. But sometimes also they can switch place to another because every time they spend a few hours in the area, let's take a week in the same area, eventually they wipe all grasses species out. And then there is no regrowth right now, which is still the winter, no rain. So they would continuously moving place to another, which means that in the end, if we don't have rain, just for an example, until next year, September, there will be no more of these grass that you see around, because then they will be continuously feeding on those grasses, but also including elephants. So it actually results in drought, animal run out of the food source. So everybody, just for the update that, so Windy has broken down, and then I don't think it's going to get going soon, so you would be having us for quite some times until it's fixed. Hopefully it's going to be fixed. So we working on what we're going to find for everybody. I know they had a buffalo in that area, which buffalo they won't move, but I'm not sure where this buffalo they're going to end up to, because then they're pushing maybe towards Treehouse Dam area, that side. And this is where the elephants, we saw them this morning. One of our helper, perhaps going to that Windy to get it fixed. True squirrels there on top of the mound. Look at that. Just such a beautiful on there. There's quite a lot of light in the background, but they gotta have to get mobile somehow. Although the squirrels, they move during the day, look for the oil, marula nuts, or various pods, which is all a little bit of a nut inside. And that's what they survive, eating those then. Beautiful tail. Hardly for them to get balanced. And that tail, especially with a heavy wind like this, but they're so cool. When they don't want to come out, they can still remain in the holes. But the hunger then would take place. And these are the one of the creature that you may find them in a group 3 to 4 in the same area. But I'm not sure what is seen there. Maybe perhaps trying to figure out how to begin in this weather. Search for those nuts. So our tree squirrels so small. Less than perhaps anything from 200 grams somewhere there. Or even the dwarf mongoose are much bigger than them. So they're puffed up to provide warmth. But all the animals do this, so they gotta puff up. So the skin, when it's fluffy, and that's where now you can tell that animal feel cold, and it's only a way of them providing warmth or protecting themselves against the cold. So we're gonna have a ground squirrels here. These are only the squirrels who get tree squirrels. And they're only diurnal, so they only move during the day. At night they rest. But a lot of these squirrels, babies, or even the squirrels themselves, they get hunted quite a lot, especially when they're near the holes. Got the African harrier hawk. Stick its legs right into the holes, tree holes. Came up with one of these guys, babies. Come out with some snakes. They're very good in that, those harrier hawks, on hunting in the holes. So we're gonna move down there. Hopefully I'm gonna spend time 3 hours there in that area, and then see if we come across anything else there. sun will pop out, but it's not that it's going to be warmer for sure. The wind is still blowing very strong. Cold is still coming through. I would love to spend with the cats doing its hunt in this kind of weather like that, if we ever come across one. So I'm gonna make my way down to Treehouse Dam in that area.
The Masai Mara in Kenya is an iconic wilderness filled with life. Its inspirational beauty has captivated our hearts on WildEarth for many years. While this season of the world's greatest migration has been missed, WildEarth is preparing a spectacular comeback in 2022. For the first time ever, WildEarth will be running expeditions to Kenya's Masai Mara throughout the 2022 migration season. Hosted by David Githu and Isaac Rotich, you could be a part of the team that shares the wildebeest migration with the world, live on WildEarth's daily safaris. If you're interested, then head over to our website to find out more.
Our competitors are in the room behind me right now for the birding challenge, where they have to look at pictures and identify the birds and then separately listen to bird calls and identify them. But it's not easy. This is going to be the toughest one. Here we have the previous year's winners. You can see they're trying to see if they can remember all the answers, and look at them taking a sneak peek.
We've just witnessed the last bit of old buffalo bulls who just disappeared, trailing the herd into this lovely woodlands. And we just have a little bit of sun peeking through every now and then, a welcome relief to this extremely cold morning. And just want to remain, even though we don't have visual of these buffalo anymore, our plan is just to backtrack a little bit and see if there's not perhaps any sign of lion that are following this group. We know that there's tracks around in the immediate area, but so far nothing concrete. And this could be a patience game. We might need to be waiting here for some time. Hi Jennifer. Well, that was done in the 1800s, and I'm not exactly sure as to what reason that might have been. At the time, we know certain historical figures during the time where other countries still colonized parts of South Africa or still under colonial rule brought fallow deer in, and perhaps for an aesthetic reason on private estates, and they subsequently escaped from a number of those private introductions and became feral. The only reason I could think is purely for aesthetics, just perhaps to have a few deer. Maybe it reminded them of home to a large degree, in spite of the fact that we've got such wealth in terms of species in Africa. It is very limited areas. It's not all over the country and shouldn't be regarded as a problem necessarily. I know that in some parts of the Karoo, there's populations of fallow deer, feral, that are somewhat competing with livestock and the native springboks to those areas. And it's never a good idea to introduce creatures to habitats that they do not belong to. One could easily disturb the balance. And we've seen this worldwide with several introductions of species that often gets introduced for an ecological reason, perhaps to combat a certain other creature. I mean, I take an example in some of our big lakes or reservoirs in South Africa. We have a plant called the hyacinth that on occasion takes over, and for instance then a certain beetle brings in to deal with the hyacinth, and the beetle then becomes a problem. You know, so it's once the ecology is disturbed, it is very difficult to get it back to its original state. Unfortunately, we are here in the greater Kruger region, which is still very much natural the way it was. And how privileged are we to be able to experience this bit of old Africa, and for some even call it our home. And having said that, just looking at the scene, which is just at first glance a general African scene, the woodlands, the grass, but it's almost as if it speaks. The wind in your ear, the grass swaying in the wind, the twigs. And it's just, Africa's so diverse and there's so much to see and learn out here. And that brings me to the expedition to the Masai Mara in 2022.
The Masai Mara in Kenya is an iconic wilderness filled with life. Its inspirational beauty has captivated our hearts on WildEarth for many years. While this season of the world's greatest migration has been missed, WildEarth is preparing a spectacular comeback in 2022. For the first time ever, WildEarth will be running expeditions to Kenya's Masai Mara throughout the 2022 migration season. Hosted by David Githu and Isaac Rotich, you could be a part of the team that shares the wildebeest migration with the world, live on WildEarth's daily safaris. If you're interested, then head over to our website to find out more.
So everybody, birds. Grey, go away, bird. So everybody, indeed, what you just saw there in Masai Mara 2022, it's going to be the best area to visit, where you would see quite a lot of our stuff, such as all the wildebeest, but not only all wildebeest, the zebras. There was a gazelle, we don't get one yet. You know, the topies, of those. These tall trees, belenates, we have some, but there you would see them clearly on these open areas. They're all crocodile in a river, aiming for these trees to cross that river for sure. If you have actually done that booking, you would truly love it. Only a lifetime of experience you would have ever had. So now we're sitting here with the grey Galway bird. You can see also many of birds they haven't yet and excited, flying around due to the wind that is taking place. But I'm also trying to, not to hide, but there's no way to hide, but I'm trying to make sure whenever I look towards the wind, it's all the wind throwing too much into my face. Then all you hear from your side is all of the wind on your speaker. Beautiful bird, crest, and they're always there. These are the birds that don't actually really migrate, so they're all the year round. But they would love fruits. They eat fruits quite a lot. That is their special diet. They would, well, it's not such fruit this time, but there's quite a lot of other stuff they can feed on by setching on top of the trees. Some trees they still have dried fruit, which from last year. So we're sitting at Treehouse Dam. Benji, you asking, so do I think the small animal would die from being cold? No, they don't die, so they still survive. Would be really unusual for them. Some of the animals that get used to cold, animals more especially, it's so that they don't really stand too much chance when they're very cold, a colder wind. Well, that's why the animal that we have here, so wouldn't have elk, we have buffaloes, these buffalo that you saw with Chris back there. Oh, there's a buffalo coming down to our right, because we're sitting at the Treehouse Dam, so what we see on the far right, there, right to the bush. Looks like we have all the
Now, you would recall that during the last week I keep on referring to the Bushwilla Woodlands or woodland savanna that we have here. And now that we're heading into spring, the bushwillows are one of the first plants to start flowering, even though it hasn't rained yet. And we also refer to this group of plants collectively as the combretums, the bushwillows. Now, the Bushwilla Woodlands, there's 3 species that dominate the area. And this is one of them, the russet bushwillow, also referred to as the walking stick tree by some of the locals. Often it's a very hard, durable wood, extremely hard, which is characteristic of most of the bushwillows. And this is a particular one that does not dominate the landscape, often just found along the drainage lines in the riverine areas. And out further away we would find the red bushwillow, which I will show you at a later stage, as well as the large fruited bushwillow. The large fruited bushwillows is what the elephants seem to target quite a bit now. Now, one thing that you can use to identify the tree, other than shape, and you can't really use this particular one's shape, it's not a very typical of the species, but one can look at those seed pods. It's a four-winged pod, and it does have a little nut-like structure on the inside. Now, these seeds are slightly toxic for us to consume. Apparently it causes hiccups, so it won't necessarily be deadly or anything, but you can use it to make a tea. So the Shangaan people of this area have taught me how to make a lovely tea out of those seed pods, which is like our rooibos tea further south, a native plant to South Africa as well. A very healthy tea, rich in antioxidants, and it's got a very delicate, mild flavor to it. And just looking at that seed pod, so when they do fall to the ground, those four wings on the pod helps with seed dispersal. Now, in their case, it would be with wind. The wind will keep rolling it, almost like a tumbleweed, even though they're quite small. Much smaller than a tumbleweed. This is about the size of a grape. Such an important group of plants. They provide fodder to most of the browsers. Kudu, I've seen Impala consume the leaves. Elephants obviously love the bark at the moment, full of nutrients and sugars for them. And the pollinators, bees, flies, wasps, multiple other insects are now attracted to these flowers, helping to pollinate the tree. Now, the name walking stick tree is just referring to the vertical branchlets that often comes out of the main trunk that are often very straight and the perfect thickness for a walking stick. And it's such a durable hard wood that even with little treatment it will last nearly a lifetime. Some of the straighter branches often used for fence poles in the old days. Incredibly good firewood, most of these bushwillows, especially the red bushwillow, which is one of the heaviest woods that we find out here. And the importance of trees is extremely high in this ecosystem. They anchor the soil, they provide food to thousands of organisms. Good morning, Jerome. I always like to select a question of the day, and I think yours are a serious contender for that. Now, Jerome wants to know, why do plants disperse seed in different ways? Now, I'm going to start off with organisms in general. Each organism has evolved to occupy a particular environmental niche or ecological niche. They each have a different role to play and a different job to do in the ecology. So therefore, it will make sense that they also develop different ways of survival. And with plants, it all starts with seed production and seed dispersal. Different plants will grow in different environments and different soil structures and in different climates. And each climate brings different challenges as how seeds can disperse. So in the case of the bush willow, it is obviously wind. Now another way that seeds obviously disperse through wind is, if we look at something like Impala lilies or some of the finer seeds that balloons out with the wind. Some seeds like certain grasses and other small herbs will have a structure that can attach to the fur of animals. Thorns get stuck into hoofs and they get dispersed. Some grass seeds are consumed by birds and other herbivores and get deposited again in the dung, which is a very nice little fertile growing ground for it. And then water as well. Water is also an important disperser of seed. So it's all about how each and every organism has developed its own strategy in order to fully occupy its environmental niche, or its, in layman's terms, its job. And the interesting is, a plant, once it starts growing in the soil, that's where it's going to stay for life. And they have often no control where they grow. It's a matter of where the seed lands and where it germinates. A buffalo can move around and outmaneuver lions and go and look for water and go look for food. But plants are fixed terrestrial organisms. And therefore, this huge variety of ways to disperse seeds. There's another way of dispersing as well. Often you have certain plants with very pod-like, very hard, almost like bulbous type of seed pods that bursts open and then disperses seeds through that mechanical means. It's a process called dehiscence. There's even some grasses that have a very sharp tip on the seed, individual seed, with what we call an awn, or almost like a little tail-like structure, and that dries up and it twists or contorts. And the moment it receives moisture, it starts straightening, and it creates this drilling effect that virtually drills the seed, either if it's fallen on top of grass closer to the surface in order to germinate, or sometimes even into the wet soil. An example of that is speargrass, which I haven't seen around yet, or at least not with any seed pods. So that's another interesting way that a particular grass will make sure that they spread around. You can see that almost thick mat of grass, and if you're a tall species and your seed falls on there, it's not going to reach the ground necessarily, and therefore that speargrass will very often be able to get through that mat of grass directly to the soil. Well, that was another great discussion on ecology. Very deep interest of mine, and I hope that there's more to come. Just sitting around and just listening to sounds, just looking at every single bush with the wind moving around it, and through it. It could be an exhilarating experience, just sort of reconnecting with Africa and with nature. I've often asked myself why the fascination with Africa. And it's essentially the birthplace of man. We are all from Africa, and our roots are here. Modern man has become very detached from nature, and therein lies the beauty of Africa for me. It helps me to reconnect to those ancient roots. Almost reawakens primal instinct in one. You almost come to the realization and almost forgotten memories of mankind that returns when spending time in this ancient landscape. Such a rewarding and fulfilling experience. Our plan has not yielded any results yet. We are still in the same area where the buffalo used to be, just hoping that we would hear anything that points us to the presence of lions. I've even taken a short perimeter walk around just to see if there's any potential tracks. So like I mentioned this morning, a good idea is to backtrack from where the buffalo was seen, and that is exactly what we're doing. We are moving around looking for tracks and then just stopping and listening, doing a bit of a perimeter walk, couple 100 yards into the bush and back, and we will continue to do that. It is extremely cold this morning. Vincent, I think your question might also be a contender for question of the day. Yes, indeed, there are animals that eat poisonous plants, and I'm just trying to look if I can't see any around us. There's quite a number. Generally speaking, the animals here know which plants are poisonous and which are not. And let's take one example, for instance. There's a tree that we find often along the drainages here called the tamboti. It's in the larger Euphorbia family, and we know that they have a milky latex that is rather toxic. But I have seen things like giraffes at times nibbling on the leaves. Could be potentially medical. I'm convinced that animals do know that there's certain plants that can assist with things like internal parasites. And then more importantly, porcupines will consume the bark of tamboti trees. And to us it's toxic. It's even toxic enough that if you make fire with it, that smoke can make you sick. And yet porcupines are able to digest it. Another example, our Euphorbias or candelabra trees we found in parts of the area and elsewhere are also a very toxic plant. Another milky latex, and black rhino is very fond of that plant, for instance, and they readily eat it. So yes, certain organisms are equipped to consume toxic plants. Even some animals. If you look at millipedes, for instance, millipedes do contain small quantities of cyanide-like substances, or actual hydrogen cyanide. And it will make most animals sick if they do consume it, whereas the African civet, which is a very small cat-like animal that we found at night here, the African civet, and they can consume large quantities of millipedes. So yes, quite a number of organisms have evolved and developed strategies to be able to consume certain toxic plants. But it would rather be the exception than the norm. Butterflies are very well known for using that as a strategy in terms of defense, chemical defense, where, for instance, milkweed butterflies or monarchs are known for their larvae that will feed on milkweeds or some toxic plants, and these toxins are sequestered, as we call it, into the adult phase. And therefore monarchs have this beautiful coloration, but it also serves as a warning. And that's why they're very slow flying. Seems to be an easy target for a bird or something, but those toxins, they retain it into the adult form. Interesting. There's even insects who can neutralize toxic plants. Isn't nature just unbelievable? Hi, Danny. Well, I love the topic of survival in the African bush. It's something that's also a very keen interest of mine. And we always taught that anything with a milky latex should be avoided, which is true. However, I'm not sure if you've ever eaten a very fresh fig. And imagine when you pick a fig, immediately you would see that latex coming out, and that is 100% edible. Out here we have a few plants that are edible that does contain a milky latex. Just one that comes to mind is the low-felt milkberry, as well as the brown ivory that's found in parts of this part of the world sometimes. Their fruits are very sweet, lovely to eat, but yet they do have a milky latex. So no, not every single plant that does contain a milky latex-like substance is toxic. However, if you do not 100% know the plant, it is always advisable not to consume it. One should normally assume that something with a latex, a white milky latex, is toxic. But there are exceptions. But it all comes down to exact knowledge of the plant. Lovely question. Hi, Kathy. Yes, we do have some plants that will flower even in winter. And that is a strategy to avoid competition between pollinators like bees and flies and so forth. So some plants will flower in winter. And imagine if you're one of the only plants that flower in winter, all the nice little bees and flies will come to you. Very good strategy or plan to survive. I like that question. In fact, Kathy, I'm going to hopefully show you one or two flowers other than the one we're looking at. The wind is picking up again. It's just coming in waves. And like Andrew mentioned, this should be suitable for the predators. It's a strong wind, lower light conditions, so it muffles the sound as well when you walk. So this should be good hunting weather, and that's what I'm hoping, that what would exactly happen here. We'll hopefully be moving on a little later. There doesn't seem to be much happening here. This is the area where the lion tracks were pointing to, but let's hold thumbs and see what happens.
The best part about being a guide is being able to live out in Africa's wild places and being able to share that with people. Of all the challenges, for me, the one that I'm probably the most comfortable with is the game drive. I think that's what I do most days, so that would probably be what I feel like I'd do the best at. Almost like someone's put little Lego blocks up there and made this perfect little sort of statue, and there's another one further along as we drive. One of the challenges I'm the most nervous about would probably be shooting. I think on the day there's always quite a bit of pressure and intimidation, always associated with it, but I guess we'll see how it goes. I hope I'll win this competition, but if I don't, it's still been an experience of a lifetime, and I've learned a lot and met a lot of really, really cool people.
I've seen something I've never seen here before. Look at these cubs. One is crossing the river. It's being washed away, unfortunately, but I'm sure the mother is going to save her. Look at that. How beautiful. Look at that. One crossing, two to go.
Well, just as we're trying to get out, unfortunately, we've had a bit of a breakdown. And Marcel is present. He's trying to help us to fix it. So I'm just going to ask you to bear with us. Possibly something that might have gotten wrong when I was engaging into that herd of buffalo earlier. But hopefully we'll be up and running soon. These things do happen. I'm being told, or was told, that Wendy has a tendency to do this. The old girl has served us very well, and it's understandable that every now and then something would go wrong. On the other hand, what better place to be stuck in? Could have been on the highway with traffic, and I'll take this any day. Hi, Maria. The I've got a few books. All depends on what purpose. You know, if it's just ID, there's a couple that you can buy at most shops. My favorite is Palgraves, is the author. It's a very thick book, and it's more a textbook or reference to a lot of information about the tree, its ecological status, very in-depth, not necessarily all of it very interesting. It's very scientific, and that is my go-to book when I want to reference any plant, any information about it and so forth. It's not necessarily the best one to ID certain plants. In fact, it's always a good plan to have a different set of books for each group of plants. So you would rather want to buy a book on trees alone, and then grasses by itself is a whole different study line. You'll just have to get a book on grasses, for instance. And then flowers, it's there you go into some serious variety. I mean, there's flowers that are not yet even discovered, even here. In South Africa, every now and then, scientists will discover a new flower that's not previously been known. So I keep quite a number of books, and I like to get books from different authors, because people are different and people have different views and different angles on certain topics. So it's always good to just get as much opinions about a subject as possible. That just helps you to formulate your own eventually. It seems like help is on the way. So while we're trying to get Wendy up and started again, let's see what Andrew is busy with.
So everybody, we're back on track again. We have to leave the dam there due to the technical issue. Sorry about that. So we're going to go back see how these buffalo are doing. Perhaps they're still around the dam, treehouse dam. Chris won't able to move around for now, as we're seeing back there. Now this buffalo, it looks like they're going to push more south then. Perhaps cross to a little Gari or Hoffman in that area. In that side there, they're perhaps going to deal with the Kahuma Pride. So you're asking how many kilometers do I drive in one safari? So that also depends. Yeah? Some drive are longer, some are shorter, depending on the sighting, if they're all available. But if then it's none, keep driving around. You may end up driving 11, 12, 13 kilometers around. So the longest drive it takes usually is 16 kilometers, but that is where you continuously drive and then you don't find much to stop about. But if it's quite a lot of a sighting, you don't have to cover much distance of driving around. left the area. There's a visual of them still. That they actually left behind. They're perhaps going to take their drink. And the rest of them already moved. Oh, isn't that cool there, Darren? So you find a little bit of a hide, so just a little bit of the bush that we use it as a hide for now. There's less wind here. These are the two bulls that follow from right far end of the herd. One looks like he's drinking. The other one perhaps would drink or maybe not. We're just gonna see here. Donnie, you're asking would the buffalo's coat get thicker and shed in summer? No, so they difference to, I don't know what, probably elk will do that. Those animals that are actually in pretty much of the cold weather condition all the time, but these that don't actually do that. They just got a normal coat all the year round. And that's why they would get to the summer condition. This is where they would be in need for such a waterhole like this during that hot. Take that drink, and especially separated males like these. They come independent, but also they're protectable, so they would worry so much about any approach when they're not in a group. We're just gonna see because they're trying to go down again. So they exactly know where the herd have moved to. They would follow one another through their trails of their tracks of where the other member have moved on. So we're going to have to reposition here. Looks like this was pretty much the end of this herd. Oops. So we're going to try and keep up with the rest, but they're moving through the bush, perhaps trying another road back there.
The Masai Mara in Kenya is an iconic wilderness filled with life. Its inspirational beauty has captivated our hearts on WildEarth for many years. While this season of the world's greatest migration has been missed, WildEarth is preparing a spectacular comeback in 2022. For the first time ever, WildEarth will be running expeditions to Kenya's Masai Mara throughout the 2022 migration season. Hosted by David Githu and Isaac Rotich, you could be a part of the team that shares the wildebeest migration with the world, live on WildEarth's daily safaris. If you're interested, then head over to our website to find out more.
So everybody, we're gonna go around here since that two of these buffalo have disappeared. So, but for sure, as we know of this area being so thick bushes, savanna, it's all the covered trees around, grass is too tall, so animals disappear very immediately. So we're in Masamare, there you would witness, if it happens, you get there in 2022. If you have already done that booking, you would spend time in this crossing point where those wildebeest use to cross over to the other side. I know it's quite a few of these points where they use them, but then you would have a lot of a time, especially when they started to cross. It's such an amazing, but to see how they swim across that lake, river. In the meantime, all these crocodile, they're aiming for their target. They can miss sometimes, not always that they kill. A lot of these wildebeest die by drowned and they push one another so hard trying to get out of that. So you will get all the experience though, so it will be much exciting things happening. So myself, I'm going to see if I will see this herd. If they cross there, you will also see something about similar to what is happening in Masamare, but they are the buffalo, these are not the wildebeest. Looks like it's a big block though then, eh? They'll cross this road soon, maybe later on. It will depend on how fast they're moving. So the only thing about animals being moving in the weather, like this, it's so that they don't get used to it, especially because it's only in a certain month of a year. So we're gonna try and see if we can see this buffalo again.
You know what, like they say, when it rains, it pours. Now, in my experience in the bush, that goes the same with when things go wrong. We just had a slight breakdown and managed to get our vehicle up and running again. Sometimes you have to bear with these things. However, now that we're up and running, we can go and look for animals again and always look back at these events, and one should actually see the humor in it. Rather funny. And like I always mention, I'd rather have a breakdown here and spend an hour in the bush watching birds than having it on the highway. Anyway, back to nature. Very mixed morning. We've had some great sightings. We have seen buffalo, we've seen elephants, a couple of birds. And it's very cold. I'm trying to figure out what the weather's trying to do. It is so variable at the moment that we don't know what to expect from day to day, even hour to hour. Yesterday, we literally had a 30-degree morning, Celsius, and the afternoon we were back with jackets and trousers and all sorts of things to keep us warm. I even had a blanket over my legs this morning. It just shows you. They call South Africa a world in one country, but in the same breath, you can have all seasons in one day. And that is just part of the variety, not only the animals, just in weather and terrain, that makes this such an intriguing place. And it just amazes me every single day I'm out here.
Seems to be all of these herd of buffalo, they still haven't approached. This is actually the southern boundary. But I'm gonna drive maybe westwards, see if maybe we pick up anything else along this road. And they're still perhaps making their way to cross. Or maybe they'll spend time grazing in there because they just drink water. Nothing make them be so hurry around too much. So that it may happen maybe if they cross south and they will Nazarene, you're asking at what age do the female buffaloes started to go in estrus? So roughly around 5 years, somewhere there. And that's where they started to actually, can sometimes even started to go on estrus just before then. So depending on nutritions of the food they have in the area. Just checking around. So yeah, anything 4 or 5 there. See, you're asking would the predators still hunt in this extremely cold condition? They can still hunt. Extreme weather condition. Yes, they can still hunt. That actually even make them happy about moving in that condition because even though it's cold, but it's windy, blows so much, and they won't spend a lot of energy by crawling around, getting close to the prey species. So they already have a hide, which is the wind. Of course, they would even use the wind as an easy access to the prey species, though. And that's what they always hunt. When they hunt, approach the wind so that the prey species mustn't smell them. Unless if they could spot them, but perhaps they can't even hear them. All of the prey species they get disturbed, their hearing is just all went lost when it's wind. extremely condition like this. It's not actually greater survival for prey species. All of these buffaloes, chance of them getting hunted, it's higher. In a windy, but it also applied the same when it rains. It's all about the same. So they would push too much to hunt in that. Easy for them to use advantage of the chemical. As long as they don't get spotted, they were able to make their way straight into the prey species. But without the species being realized that there is danger around, so the game drive radio has been really quiet. I didn't actually hear any of a guide this morning. I've been looking for that update all along. So I'm gonna carry on. Hopefully we come across finally anything interesting around here.
Every year in August, South Africa marks Women's Month. WildEarth would like to acknowledge and thank all the amazing females who have worked tirelessly to share our nature with the world.
We're gonna have to just wait, okay? She's gonna come out there just on my right-hand side, and she can see these impala.
Now you've got to inhale it. It burns. I don't know if it's supposed to work instantly. Go, girl, go! Get her! Get her, girl! Get her! I'm so looking forward to following her story in the future.
I'm really hoping there's two. I'm really hoping there's two. But you know, even if there's one, oh my goodness, everyone!
And I get to share it with you. Isn't that extra special? I get to experience it and show it to everyone.
Guiding as an industry has become, over time, more and more professional and more recognized as a profession rather than just a hobby. And so to be recognized for that professionality is really kind of it's humbling, really, to be able to say that. It's definitely birding is the thing that I feel most comfortable with in terms of categories that we have here. At least comfortable. I mean, you never know how you're going to shoot on a particular day. You can have a good day where you blast everything as you need to, in terms of the targets, and then you can have a shocker where you just, miss a single shot here or there, and that's basically the end of your day. To be considered for such an experience is really a powerful thing, and so I'm here just to have a lot of fun and experience what the competition's all about.
You are cheeky. That was a brave decision. Amber Eyes is... Oh. That is so magic. That was absolutely wonderful. Amber Eyes just gave that cub an enormous hug.
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth daily.
So we went now, stop with the Impalas. Looks like a very interesting group here of all male, look like that. So they are one of these Bachelor group. So they congregate as all Bachelor males together. And this is what is always happening with Impalas. They're still happy to congregate as the only group of males, and they will keep doing it. Even though all the rutting season, it's all done. So they get used to the situation of being separated from the females, where they didn't actually have access all along to the female, even during the rioting season. Now we spoke about these coat of theirs, where sometimes shiny when it's warm, because they don't need to provide warmth. But now, because of the wind, all fluffy. So it's a sign that animal is still protecting itself against the cold wind. Some animal, when they're not healthy, you would tell by the coat, can be like that. But in this situation, it's not all about the unhealthy. It's all about the extremely cold front that is actually pushing through. Just saying that you love it when impalas look fluffy. Actually, it's for a turn, it's always gorgeous just to see them like these, because we know anytime we see them, they're normal. This is when they're shiny, when it's warm, and they're such beautiful animals, even though you wouldn't see them swim about to get themselves clean, but wind would actually dust all of the dirty that may be stuck in his fur, especially when it's fluffy like that. And they always stay clean. Be like this perhaps many of hours during the day, and they go down when they want to, and some of them they actually even practice that chewing cud, standing up, which they can sometimes lie down. So I'm gonna be sending you over to Chris while we're still looking at these impalas.
Just about time to end the show, and talking about last minute luck. This is one of my favorite elephant sightings, is when they come towards you. And they're gonna hopefully pass very close. Look at the little bubba. Now these elephants, the closest one is less than 3 meters from us. One of my favorite things to do in the bush, spend time with elephants as close as they are now. And this little one's just telling us, just letting us know that I see you. Oh, look at the little one now. It's amazing. Had we not broken down with Wendy, we might have passed this road at a later stage or earlier and perhaps missed this group of elephants. Just shows you, everything happens for a reason. When the gremlins are around, sometimes some good can come out of it. And I'm overjoyed just seeing elephants, even if it's like the 10,000th time in my life, but it never gets old. This surely creates promise for this afternoon. Such a lovely sighting. Africa's largest mammal on land. And how amazing is that we can go back to camp with a sense of accomplishment and achievement. That we've taken you on a live safari today and hopefully created moments that you'll never forget. Join us again this afternoon for your own safari, live into the African wild.